All right, we will give it one more minute, and we'll get started. Hello, hello. Welcome. All right, folks are still trickling in. Let's give it about 30 more seconds. Hi, super excited to have you all here as well. All right, I think that we are gonna get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Intersex in the Workplace, What You Need to Know. My name is Bria Brown King, and I am the Director of Engagement for Interact Advocates for Intersex Youth. So glad to be here with you all today. First, we're going to go over just a few agenda items for today's workshop and for our time together today. So first, we're going to start off with some Intersex 101 to really ground us all in the discussion today. And so, just so we're all on the same page and have a basic understanding, of what intersex is. Then we'll discuss some of the challenges that intersex people face. So we're talking about societal challenges, medical challenges, and of course, challenges that intersex folks might run into in the workplace. And so in order for us to, support intersex people in the workplace, we really need to have that baseline understanding of what intersex is. And so then we'll get into, well, what does it mean to have inclusivity for intersex people, and what does that look like? Um, and then lastly, we'll talk about some of the steps that each of you can take to make your workplace a little more intersex inclusive. And so we only have about an hour together today. And, that hour is going to fly right on by, but I'll be sure to share some helpful resources with you all in case you leave here today, wanting to learn more and, in case you're ready to take some action steps. So we are in a live meeting, which means that all of you have the ability to be on the screen and to unmute yourselves, but I have you all right now. But once we get to the discussion point part, you'll be able to unmute yourselves. So I'll just ask folks that they, try to keep yourself muted during the presentation so that we don't have any interruptions, so that we can get through the entire presentation, because we have a lot of material to cover, and we want to make sure time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So feel free to add any questions that you might have in the chat. I'll try my best to answer all of them, but I'll also share my email address and contact information just in case we run out of time and we don't make it to your question. I really want to create a space for us to really learn together. So don't be shy, to ask questions, even if you think it might be a silly one. So hello, my name's Bria. My pronouns are they and them, and sometimes she. some of the identities that I hold very close is that I am a Black, queer, masculine presenting intersex person. I'm also a first generation college graduate and graduate student. I've been doing intersex advocacy work now for almost 2 years, at least on a full-time basis, and I am the director of engagement at Interact Advocates for Intersex Youth. It's always such an honor to participate in this summit. Last year was my first year as a speaker here, and so much has happened, and I've learned so much since then. And again, I'm just excited to share this space with you all. And so, as I mentioned, I work as the Director of Engagement for Interact Advocates for Intersex Youth. Interact is actually the oldest and largest intersex policy organization in the US. We are a national organization, so we work in states all throughout the country with a primary mission of advocating for the rights of people born with intersex traits. So any sort of policy that both directly and indirectly affects intersex people, we probably either sponsored it or we at least collaborated with another activist, partner organization, or government agency on it at some point. We were founded in 2006 by Dr. Antamar Mattis, who is a non-intersex person, which I think goes to show how important our allies are, right? And what they can help us accomplish through their passion for intersex justice. And at Interact, we have sort of three main buckets of work, which include our law and policy, where again, we advocate on behalf of intersex youth in the courts, and also, with local and national policy developments. Another bucket is media and outreach, where we're working on ensuring that intersex voices are being accurately represented in the media. So we get to consult on things like books and scripts and TV shows, et cetera. And lastly, we have our youth leadership advocacy program, where we work to build the advocacy skills of the current and future generation of intersex youth leaders, which is how I actually got started with Interact as a youth advocate. Then I became the communications intern, and eventually through a series of very fortunate events, I ended up where I am today as the director of engagement. So, Interact worked very hard. I wanted to just highlight some of the things that were behind some of our accomplishments. Again, we worked really hard to make sure that there was intersex inclusion in the Equality Act, for example, by making it very clear that discrimination on the basis of sex includes discrimination on the basis of a person's sex characteristics. In 2018, we worked to pass SCR 110 in California, which is a resolution that acknowledges and affirms that intersex people deserve the right to bodily autonomy and integrity. We participated in many conversations with the Department of Education and the Department of Justice to address the specific needs of intersex students and why they deserve to be protected from discrimination and harassment in educational settings, which led to intersex students explicitly being included in Title IX under sex-based discrimination. We've worked on legislation in multiple states, including working to pass the very first intersex education bill in the country that was passed in New York City, and it requires that the city's health department to create an education campaign to serve as an educational. It serves to educate healthcare providers and parents on why these surgeries are harmful, and lets them know that surgery isn't the only option. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So about 2 summers ago, Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago posted a public promise to end intersex surgery. Following that announcement, a few months later, Boston Children's Hospital also publicly committed to restrictions on intersex surgery as well. And last summer, as a result of intersex advocacy and the work of intersex activists on the ground, New York City Health and Hospitals, which is actually the largest public healthcare system in the US, announced that they would also be prohibiting surgeries on intersex youth. We filed the very first intersex-specific amicus brief to the Supreme Court, uplifting intersex voices. So folks might remember the Gavin Grimm bathroom case. Well, Interact wrote about how these anti-trans bathroom bills also affect intersex people as well. And last but certainly not least, just to highlight another exciting. So HRC, the Human Rights Campaign's Healthcare Equality Index is used by hospitals to rank their LGBTQ plus integrity, right? So Interact, along with other intersex activists, added a new criteria to the HEI this year that ask hospitals whether or not they have policies on surgeries being performed on intersex children, because healthcare institutions can't and shouldn't advertise that they're LGBTQ plus friendly while also violating the human rights of intersex people. And so in honor of October being LGBTQ History Month, and also Intersex Awareness Day coming up on October 26th, I just wanted to start off with this picture of me actually giving my very first in-person talk on the steps of the Supreme Court in 2019 at the Rise Up October 8th rally, where I had the opportunity to be, one of the first out intersex people to speak about intersex issues on the steps of the Supreme Court. And this is very relevant to our conversation today, because at the time, the Supreme Court was hearing arguments about whether or not people could be fired from the workplace for being LGBTQ+. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Audre Lorde. Whenever I do a presentation, I try to acknowledge, the folks that made it really possible for me to doing this work. And so what does it mean to be intersex? Well, intersex is an umbrella term that's used to describe someone who was born with one or more physical sex characteristics, such as their genitals, their reproductive organs, or their chromosomes that don't match up with society's typical notions of what a male or female body is supposed to look like. Sometimes these traits or differences are apparent when a child is born, but sometimes these differences don't become apparent until the kid reaches puberty. And there are times where, people might go their entire lives and not knowing that they're intersex. And also there are people that don't find out that they're intersex until they're attempting pregnancy or when they become adults and maybe they're accessing their medical records for the first time. Again, we also know that there are some people who go their entire lives not knowing that they're intersex. It's important to understand and remember that the intersex community is very diverse. There are over 30 different intersex variations. So we are diverse in our experiences and in our specific variations. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So, I really wanted to point that out because I think sometimes we get caught up on, language, and sometimes we get stuck on whether a person with a specific variation actually identifies as intersex or not. But, I think what's important is to remember what we're fighting for. We are fighting for the injustices of people born with intersex traits. And so intersex bodies have natural differences in at least one of these following components of sex. Genitalia. An intersex person could have differences in their chromosomes, the differences in their gonads, their internal sex organs, the way that their body produces hormones, the way that their body responds to hormones, and their secondary sex traits. And so just to recap, we can now see that intersex people can have differences in any one of these areas that are deemed not normal or not typical. And so when we say physical sex characteristics, we're talking, internal and external characteristics that are both primary, meaning present at birth. So again, genitalia, reproductive organs like the uterus, the ovaries, the testes, and secondary, meaning, the characteristics that usually come about during puberty. So here we're referring to things like body and facial hair, muscle mass, fat distribution, things like that. We're also talking about chromosomes, and more specifically, a person's sex chromosomes. So we're usually taught that humans typically have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and the last pair of chromosomes are our sex chromosomes. We're told that girls have XX chromosomes and develop things like a uterus, a vagina, and breast. And we're taught that boys have XY chromosomes, so they develop a penis, testes, a scrotum, and so on. But what gets left out of that narrative is that there are approximately 1.7% of people that were born with differences in their sex characteristics that actually don't fit those boxes that society tried to create for them. For example, some people with XY chromosomes might have bodies that don't respond to testosterone at all, and the body makes up for it by overproducing estrogen instead. So, intersex people aren't really rare. We're mostly just invisible. We make up, again, about 2% of the population. But to put this number into perspective, Japan makes up about 1.6% of the total world population, which is about 126 million people. So it's very likely that you've met an intersex person in your lifetime, and maybe you just didn't know it. And for me, as an intersex person, if I would have known that there were millions of other intersex people out there like me, maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone. So, why hasn't everyone heard about intersex before if it's not as rare as people like to make it seem? Well, there's shame, there's stigma, and there's a lot of secrecy as well, which we'll talk more about. Society and the medical establishment really try to erase us by, quote unquote, fixing our bodies to, again, fit into these very binary boxes of male or female. And so what do these surgeries involve? Here's a list of some of the common intersex surgeries, most commonly performed on children before the age of 2. So hypospadias, the first bullet point here, is usually performed to make a child be able to pee standing up, all in order to meet gender norms by moving the urethral opening to the tip of the penis. But, as long as urine is able to exit the body, there's no need to subject a child to such a risky procedure. Instead, we should stop, enforcing these very harmful stereotypes about the ways that boys and girls are supposed to do things like use the bathroom, right? This rhetoric is also harmful to trans children as well. Not all boys have penises and not all boys pee standing up. Creating a vaginal canal so that a child can have a more appropriate feminine genitalia, or to be able to engage in penetrative sex, really requires the parents and doctors, to make assumptions about what type of body that child might want to have when they get older, right? And what type of sex that child might choose to engage in eventually. And just because someone has a vagina, right? Just as a reminder, just because someone has a vagina doesn't mean that they'll want to engage in penetrative sex. So there's no reason to, perform any of these surgeries on children at such an early age before that child is old enough to meaningfully participate in the conversation about their bodies and what they actually want. These surgeries are really up there with things like female genital mutilation and sterilization, which we currently have laws against. But unfortunately, we don't have laws protecting intersex bodily autonomy.
Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're not seeing your advancement of slides. I just wanted to quickly come off mute to see if you were able to see that in the back. And we just want to make sure we're following along if you're showing us new slides. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Could you tell me what the current slide says?
We see the 3 circles with the internal.
Oh, we're still, okay.
Yep.
They are advancing for me. Let me stop the screen share really quickly.
Great. We just didn't want to miss what you were referring to there. Thanks so much. Sorry about that.
We are here. No, it's okay. It's totally okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Sure.
Let's try to do this again. Okay. Did you all see the slide advance there?
No, the same slide.
Still not. Okay. Maybe we are going to exit presentation mode. Can you see it here if I show the screen this way?
You may have to stop sharing and then share again.
Okay,
it's not moving at all.
Yeah, we're still seeing the 3 circles.
Okay, let's see.
Sometimes once you stop sharing and then share again, it may help.
Okay, we're gonna try to do that. All right, it looks like I can't do that. And let me, okay, can y'all still see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, apologies.
And everyone from the chat box looks like we're loving your presentation. It's super helpful, and what you're describing is so valuable. So I don't want to take you too far off track here. If it's not working, we'll just listen.
Oh, I appreciate that. Let me see what I can do, because now the Zoom screen has completely disappeared, but I can still hear you all. Okay, I think we might just have to continue without the slides. I do apologize. I just don't see the Zoom screen and see you all at all. Let me.
Sometimes if you swipe up, you'll be able to spot where Zoom went.
Yeah, it looks like my screen is actually completely frozen. Okay, sorry, y'all. I think we're just gonna continue without the slides, and I will make sure that everyone has a copy of them, because I don't see this Zoom screen anywhere and I can't find you all. So I apologize. I'm glad that I did a live meeting so that you all can unmute yourselves and let me know. So that's great. All right, so you can still see me, right, and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. So let's just continue on. And so I think we were just finishing up talking about the surgeries and talking about, the reason, these surgeries are harmful is because it means that parents are really having to make assumptions about what type of body they think that child might want when they get older, right? And what type of sex that child might choose to engage in. And I believe I was just saying that, just because someone has a vagina doesn't mean that they'll want to engage in penetrative sex. And so, there's no reason to perform any of these surgeries on children at such an early age, and especially not before that child is old enough to meaningfully participate in the conversation about their bodies and what they want, right? So, these surgeries, again, are really up there with things like female genital mutilation and sterilization, which again, we currently have laws against, but we don't have any laws to protect intersex youth from these invasive, irreversible surgeries, unfortunately. So, the medical community, medical specialists, often likes to consider our differences to be disorders that need to be fixed surgically, right? But intersex surgery is, by definition, again, not life-saving. Again, it has more to do about with, our ideas about what a male or female body is supposed to look like. So, there are human rights organizations who have spoken out against these surgeries and deemed them to be a form of torture. And so I'm just going to name them just because you all can't see the screen, but the World Health Organization, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the UN of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the New York City Human Rights Commission, San Francisco Human Rights Commission. And so, that's just something to keep in mind. These surgeries have been deemed a form of torture, but they are still being performed. And so, just to offer some helpful reminders, right? All intersex people are different. Again, not everyone has had surgery. We don't all have the same experiences, and some people with intersex variations might not identify as intersex, right? And that's perfectly okay. We are not in the business of telling people who, who were born with differences have to identify as intersex, but we still believe that those individuals have the right to bodily autonomy and integrity, right? So we include them in our fight as well. We include all intersex people in the fight for intersex justice. The term intersex is usually, and so, okay, let me go back because I realizing you can't see the screen and I can't see you not seeing the screen because I also can't see the screen. But we're going through some helpful reminders, and reminder number 2 is, intersex is not a gender or a sexuality. So, the term intersex is usually used as an adjective to describe, someone's body, right? So a person can have a specific gender and also be intersex. So I can be intersex and be a woman, I can be intersex and be trans, I can be intersex and be non-binary, and so on. And some people use the term intersex alone, and it really just depends on the person, right? Helpful reminder number 3, we try to avoid the terms hermaphrodite and DSD, which stands for disorders of sex development. And so, the term hermaphrodite is really an outdated term, and it's really seen as derogatory within the intersex community. However, there are still some people who have chosen to reclaim that word, right? And that's their prerogative. Again, it's always important for us to check with the individual themselves to see what terminology they prefer. So tip number 4, the term intersexual isn't commonly used in the intersex language, right? So saying that someone is intersexual can really be misleading because it kind of sounds like a sexuality to describe someone who is only, attracted to intersex people. And we just don't want to give people the wrong idea. So helpful tip number 5, intersex people can also be non-binary. Non-binary usually describes a person's experience with their gender, right? Some intersex people might even describe themselves as having a non-binary body. Again, it's important to check with that individual. Reminder number 6, not all intersex people are queer, which we'll talk a little bit more about. It's just also important to remember that intersex people, just like they can be, just like they can have any gender identity, they can have any sexual orientation as well. To the folks in the broader LGBTQ plus community, some but not all intersex people, again, also identify as queer, but intersex people are often told that we are disordered, like many of our gay and trans friends have been told for decades, right? And, we're stronger together. Solidarity is important. So just be mindful of that. And the last reminder is, maybe don't ask people about their genitals, right? I think that's self-explanatory. All right, let's see. I had a really nice graphic to show you all. I'll try to describe it for you. So there is a kind of a comic, it's a kind of a comic graphic, and there are 3 different panels, and the cartoon kind of illustrates how all of the letters in the LGBTQ plus acronym are not the same in terms of our success in achieving recognition and freedom, free from discrimination, right? Just checking that you all can hear me still and see me.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Sorry. I don't know what you can see or hear, and I can't see or hear anything. So we're just going with it. Thank you all for your patience and understanding. So there are 3 different panels in this illustration here. So the first panel, we see the L, the G, and the B kind of trying to work their way up a cliff, right? They have like a harness, and they're trying to work their way up. So that's the first panel. And in the very last panel, we see the I and the T still kind of climbing up, right? They're still holding on. So the first panel, we see the L, the G, and the B climbing out of the pit finally. And in the second panel, we see the L, the B, and the G out of the pit. And we see them kind of celebrating, but in the second panel, the L and the G are on one side and the B is on another side, which I think really speaks to, the erasure of bisexual people, right? And again, as I mentioned, in the third panel, we see the I and the T still kind of at the bottom of the pit, still trying to work, pull themselves up. They're still climbing. And so I really thought that, this was a great depiction of the shared struggles within the LGBTQ plus community. I will definitely make sure that this image, this graphic, is included in the file section on the Pathable platform, so y'all can see. So again, I think it speaks for the need of solidarity. Because while I wish that there was no pit to begin with, right? I also wish that there was another, kind of a fourth panel showing the L, the G, and the B, helping to pull up the I and the T, because again, we are much stronger together. And again, of course, the goal, as always, is to remove all barriers. So it would be great if there was no pit to begin with. Okay, so next we're going to talk about just some of the issues faced by the intersex community, right? So the first one is medically unnecessary cosmetic surgeries, including multiple follow-up procedures to revise the initial surgery. So irreversible surgical procedures removes a child's right to self-determination, right? Issue number 2, initial sex assignment might not fit the individual as they mature, right? So what happens if that child the child's initial sex assignment doesn't align with their gender identity or, what they want their body to look like as they get older. Again, intersex kids can be any gender, including transgender. What happens if a child who was maybe assigned female at birth and was subjected to, an irreversible procedure to have a vagina surgically constructed, but then that child then realizes that their gender doesn't align with the sex they were assigned at birth. And, maybe they never wanted a vagina to begin with. So point number 3, providers are really uneducated in intersex issues, and the truth is being withheld from intersex people. So again, there have been many times when I personally went to the doctors and the emotional labor was put onto me, right, to educate my doctor about my body. Also, many intersex people don't learn that they've had surgery until they become adults, right? And like I said earlier, maybe they're trying to gain access to their medical records, only to find out that hysterectomy that they were told was performed on them as a child was actually a surgery performed to remove their internal gonads, right? So talk about the trauma that, something like that could create. Talk about the distrust of, the medical community and parents for keeping something like that from them. Talk about the confusion, right? And so point number 4 for point number 5, just other issues faced by the intersex community. Speaking of confusion, many intersex people, again, are subjected to repeated genital exams without knowing why. And that's a problem, right? This can make things like consent really confusing for a child. For me personally, I didn't get to choose whether or not I wanted to have my doctor and the 5 or so residents staring at my genitals every 6 months during a routine exam. Parental distress. A lot of parents are honestly trying to do I think they're trying to do what they think is best for their child, but I do believe that they're being misguided, right? They're asked to make decisions about their child's body when they're feeling really vulnerable and made to believe that surgery is the only option that they have. Lack of peer support. Isolation is unfortunately something that many intersex people know all too well. We grow up, we're led to believe that there's no one else out there like us and that we can't talk about our bodies to people. Intersex kids aren't being connected to peers who have shared experiences and, would maybe make them feel less alone. Erasure, right? Intersex people, again, are still largely invisible. We're often left out of important conversations about LGBTQ plus issues regarding discrimination protections. And, there are still so many people that just don't know what intersex is. And then lastly, we subject intersex children to these harmful surgeries that sometimes make them dependent on lifelong access to things like hormone replacement therapy and mental and physical health support. But there just isn't, adequate intersex affirming resources available for intersex adults. Intersex adults still report having issues with things like urinary incontinence, vaginal stenosis, which, are just some of the risks associated with early childhood surgeries. And so, what are some things that you can do to make your workplace more intersex inclusive, right? So we actually partnered with Out and Equal to create, an intersex inclusive guide to supporting intersex people in the workplace, which I also added as a resource on the Pathable platform for this session as well. So, you can actually download this guide directly from Interact's website, interactadvocates.org. And, you'll see that we've categorized all of the ways that, you can achieve an intersex inclusive workplace. For example, in your non-discrimination policy, do you explicitly include intersex variations as a protected category under sex-based discriminations? Because again, intersex variations are differences in sex traits. Therefore, discriminating against someone on the basis of their intersex status is actually discrimination on the basis of sex, right? So how are you showing up for, your intersex employees and making, making sure that the workplace is safe for them, right? So, you know, one thing that you can do, identify intersex employees on relevant forums as a voluntary way of self-disclosure and means of recognition and inclusion, right? So are you asking for voluntary information on routine forums? If intersex employees want to self-disclose their intersex status, are you providing them the opportunity and means of recognition and inclusion to do so? Right? We're not saying that this needs to be mandatory, of course, but it should be an option because, again, we're trying to promote intersex visibility and awareness, right? And so, you won't find out this information just by asking about their gender or legal sex, because, again, intersex is not a gender, nor is it a category of someone's legal sex or the sex that they were assigned at birth. Again, intersex status is a form of bodily diversity, which relates to a person's physical and biological variations and the subsequent experiences related to those variations. So on intake forms, instead, could you ask a question like, are you intersex? Plain and simple, do you have an intersex variation? Yes or no. If using forms and if you have the space to do so, maybe it can help to define intersex for people, because not everyone knows that they're intersex, even if they have an intersex variation. So just a quick reminder, intersex people can be any gender, right? Gender is really just this socially constructed set of identities and expressions that are typically codified as masculine or feminine, right? And assigned to people based on the interpretations of their bodies. Most importantly, though, gender is very personal, right? It's something that we all get to define for ourselves. So some people might use terms like male or female when describing their genders, and other people might choose not to. Some intersex people can also be cisgender, as I mentioned earlier. So again, this guide, this Out and Equal Intersex Inclusion in the Workplace, it's a really helpful guide. I really just want to go through this part. I know that y'all can't see it, but just bear with me. It's a section on, what is the connection between LGBTQ plus and intersex, right? So, I pulled this part out of, the Supporting Intersex People in the Workplace guide so that we really could understand the connection between intersex and how it relates to the broader LGBTQ plus movement, right? Intersex people face challenges that are very similar to those in the LGBTQ plus community, right? We have a common cause in fighting for our rights as people who don't fit into society's traditional, idea about binary norms like sex and gender. We also face discrimination that's also rooted in homophobia, transphobia, stigmatization, the same kind that still continues to harm the LGBTQ plus community today. So something that I want folks to keep in mind is that what the intersex and trans community, though, for instance, have in common is that we both want the autonomous right to decide, right, to make decisions about our bodies. Society sees intersex bodies as disordered and something that needs to be fixed, and that's just not true. So, are you providing intersex resources, and are you inviting intersex speakers to speak, to present to HR teams or at key diversity days like Intersex Awareness Day coming up on October 26th? we have tons of resources, free resources that are downloadable, like the workplace guide on our website, which I also added a link to in the Pathable platform as well. And also you can invite intersex speakers to give talks and webinars for key diversity days like Intersex Awareness Day. Whether you're interested in resources, speakers, publicly raising awareness about Intersex Awareness Day, maybe on social media by making a public statement, please reach out to us. Let us know how we can support you in that effort. Are you ensuring any equity and inclusion policies and activities are actually intersex affirming, right? Discrimination, again, on the basis of sex is by definition discrimination against intersex people, and intersex is an included category in the UN's free and equal global business standards, right? So intersex being represented within the groups that your organization might task to, ensure equity and inclusion in the workplace. Are you making sure that intersex people are being represented in those spaces? Are you ensuring that your intersex employees are physically and emotionally healthy? Just like everything else, just like other medical issues, sometimes intersex people go through things that might affect their work life, especially when we've experienced things like trauma, right? Many intersex people, again, need hormone replacement therapy, often, resulting often the result of, earlier medical interventions. Also, fertility issues are associated with many intersex variations. So, something to keep in mind is that intersex people tend to have higher rates of trauma that's actually equivalent to physical and or sexual abuse victims. And many of us need appropriate mental health support, but we are also really resilient, right? We are resilient survivors with, distinct perspectives and experiences that can really be an asset to employers, right? Also, again, it's possible that one of your employees may be intersex themselves or may become an intersex parent or a parent of an intersex child, right? Are you providing them access to the information and support that they might need? Are you making sure that your health insurance is not reimbursing for what has been deemed a form of torture by international human rights organizations? Are you making sure that, health insurance, again, is not being, are you making sure that your health insurance isn't, reimbursing for procedures that were deemed a form of torture by, the American Association of Family Physicians, the World Health Organization? Unfortunately, parents might feel pressured into making a decision about irreversible surgery, because they're feeling vulnerable and they're feeling pressured into it, right? Unfortunately, these procedures, again, are still being performed in the United States today by specialists across the country who are, strongly opposed to the work that we do at Interact, to advocate against these harmful procedures. We are not anti-surgery, right? We are just pro-consent. And, how are you engaging with the intersex community? Are you reaching out to intersex organizations to see how, you might be able to?
Right. Let's go, Hershey. Come on, you go before me.
Oh, I think we have.
No, it's fine.
All right.
I showed you.
Can you all still hear me?
Yeah.
Nicholas, Tim, you're accidentally off mute. Nicholas, Tim,
Oh, that's cool.
you're off mute.
See you later.
Okay, great. Are you partnering with nonprofits to create content like a train the trainers? Are you reviewing fair employment practices and benefits via HR? Are you sharing resources? Again, we have free downloadable resources on our website. Something that you can do, sign up for our newsletter, stay in the loop about potential advocacy opportunities. And remember that you don't have to be intersex to be an ally, right? We actually need allies to do this work, because this work honestly can be emotionally taxing for intersex people. And, especially if we're the ones leading the charge, right? We need our allies to step up and to show support, and to call and find out if these surgeries are being happened at medical institutions near you. If you hear about any legislative efforts, either that Interact is working on or any other, advocates across the country, see how you might be able to support that effort, whether that be calling or emailing your elected representatives, whether that be writing a letter of support, giving verbal testimony at a hearing, giving a media interview. There are just so many ways that you can be supportive. Reach out to Interact. We are here to offer that support. Lastly, certainly not least, October 26th is Intersex Awareness Day, International Intersex Awareness Day. And, this day really commemorates the anniversary of the very first public demonstration by intersex people and our allies in the US to denounce these surgeries, right? To denounce surgeries being performed on intersex children and really demand that the medical establishment take notice to that, right? So this was an event that took place on October 26, 1996 in Boston, Massachusetts, at the annual conference of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And, by the now defunct Intersex Society of North America. But, just wanted to let y'all know kind of a little bit about that history and how this movement kind of got started, and, what you all can do to help. And I will put my email in the chat if I can get the screen back up, because I can't see y'all at all. But that is my presentation for today. Thank you all for bearing with me in all of the technical difficulties. I hope it was meaningful in that y'all, found something that you could take away, that you found valuable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bria.
If you have any questions, if you could unmute yourself and ask, because I can't see the screen at all. And if you
Hi, Bria. This is Trinae Baker. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say amazing job. As you had the issue with the screen, you did not miss a beat. And as I sat and watched you, I thought about how much anxiety I would have had if that was me. I would have started sweating. I would have started fumbling and panicking. You did an amazing job. So I just wanted to acknowledge that you did not miss a beat. Very well done.
Thank you all so much. I can't see you, but I am giving you an air hug through the screen. I appreciate you. Thank you all so much. And I just wanted to say, if I don't get to answer everyone's questions, please feel free to email me. My email is Bria, BRIA, @interactadvocates.org. Would be happy to chat more.
Hi, I'm Mara del Valle, she, her from Mexico. I just wanted to say as Trinae, yeah, Trinae, your presentation was amazing. I mean, screw PowerPoint, it sometimes does stuff like that. But yeah, and it was amazing, very informative. And I wanted to ask if there are any, I mean, you already mentioned the resources from the Interact webpage, and I'm already going through them. But in case we wanted to like expand a bit more on it, or if you know of, for example, I'm in Mexico, if you know of any international organizations regarding, because I mean, it would be easy to contact Interact, but I don't think you could help a lot here if you're a national organization.
Yes. I wish I could show that screen. There are definitely organizations. I know that there is an intersex org, and a few actually in Central and Latin America. There are definitely international intersex orgs as well. Please feel free to send me an email. I would be happy to share those resources with you and also help in any other way that I can.
Thank you. I'll be writing to you eventually.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Bria, this is Alexandra Sims. I'm coming in from Spain. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think there was so much I didn't know, even having family from the intersex community, probably because I've been too afraid to ask them myself. So just thank you for that. And really, really well done. I agree. No PowerPoint needed.
Oh, thank you all so much. You're very kind.
Also, your nails are on point.
Oh, thank you. I keep forgetting that you can see me because I can't see anything but the the get on the guest list Zoom page.
Hey, Bria, it's Crystal Howard Dolliver from Bank of America. I just wanted to say thank you. This is the second time I've attended your presentation. So I came last year, and it was kind of a springboard for us. Like, we have a session focused on intersex training tomorrow, and we're going to hold our first intersex training internally on October 26th. Like, we left Summit all, fired up and actually did something with it. So thank you for that. Sometimes those things don't get back to the inspiration. So thank you for that.
Oh, wow, that's so wonderful to hear. I'm so glad that you felt inspired by it, and excited to attend your workshop tomorrow as well. Hopefully you don't have the same technical issues that I have, but
Do not say that out loud.
Well, I'm gonna knock on wood.
Thank you.
That's part of the reason why I really love doing this work. The hope is to, build capacity and help folks feel empowered to get involved. And, again, you don't have to be an intersex person to be an ally, to educate, to share information, raise awareness. So thank you so much.
Maria, my name is Anderson Clark, and I'm at EMD Serrano. So I really appreciated your talk. Thank you very much. I do have a question. I'm kind of an older guy and an activist, and about 10 years ago at trans as well. When we were thinking of including intersex with some of the activism we were doing, and we even had intersex trans people in the group, there was this, I don't know if it was a perception, but people saying, well, the intersex community doesn't want to be included with LGBTQ because that's gender identity and sexual orientation. And for the intersex folks, it's about their bodies. And, right. and so I'm wondering, has there been a shift since then? And should we be doing a better job turning that around? I think that perception may still exist in some places.
Yeah, I believe this exact question actually came up at last year's summit as well. And yeah, absolutely. I think that, that certainly still exists, but I think that what, we try to focus on is, the need for solidarity and the fact that we do work very closely with the trans community and vice versa to make sure that, our policies are trans inclusive. And, we just ask that the trans community does the same thing. And again, there are intersex people who are also trans, and you will always find people who, will tell you that they're not supportive. I think that that's just a given. But again, I just try to focus on the fact that we actually do work very closely with the trans community.
So we should be all the time putting the I with LGBTQI. We should be.
Absolutely. That is actually a wonderful point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I will say, intersex is more than just the plus sign that we're adding to the end of the acronym. It's really important to explicitly name and include intersex people. Whenever we're using the acronym, adding the I and not just, making it seem as if, the plus sign is supposed to, be enough to make intersex people feel included in, because it's not, right? And whenever we're like spelling out the acronym, it's important for us to explicitly write out the words intersex people, right? As an intersex person, and as a person who grew up as an intersex young person, knowing that I am a part of a community And seeing the I included in the acronym really means so much to me, even though I know that there are folks who, don't agree with that. But it's important for visibility and awareness raising to explicitly always include the I.
Great. Thank you for that guidance. Much appreciated.
Bria, related to that question, this is Maury with MITRE. We recently had like a conversation about which flag to use in terms of like the quasar progressive flag versus like the new flag with the intersection. I've seen like some discourse in different spaces about whether or not like there's a desire for us to actually use the intersex flag versus not, and sort of related to the question before. And I was interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think any flag that includes the intersex flag would be appropriate. It's unfortunate that y'all can't see the slides because there was definitely a slide about the history of the intersex flag. It was created, I believe, in 2013 by Morgan Carpenter. I'll be happy to post that link in the chat as well in case folks are interested in that history. But I just make sure that whatever flag you're using includes the intersex flag as well.
Bria, this is Mari Munson. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her. I'm curious because you mentioned earlier the importance of making sure health insurance is not reimbursing for these procedures. Do you know, are there any companies who have successfully negotiated like with their entire insurance provider to make sure that this is something that's like not covered across the board, or are there certain insurance companies that are kind of moving in this direction?
I don't know the exact answer to that question. I would love to say I hope so, right? But I would be happy to find that out and get back to you. Feel free to. I believe that you're able to send me a message, or if you wanted to add it in the chat, just so I can record it. Make sure I get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bria. And I'll just echo for you all of the gratitude for this presentation. And I know you can't see the chat yet, but a lot of folks really appreciative, me included. This is fantastic.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Hopefully I'm not making any weird faces because I can't see it. If I
Hi, Bria, Mara again. There's a question here on the chat that I don't think you can read if you can still find the Zoom window. But I'm curious about it, so I will repeat it. And they say, are there any mainstream movies or documentaries that feature intersex stories that you can recommend?
Yeah. Pony Boy is a film that comes to mind right off the top of my head. We also have a link with those resources on our website as well that I believe I put in the chat. But off the top of my head, I will say Pony Boy is a wonderful documentary starring an intersex person named River, who is a wonderful ally, or excuse me, a wonderful intersex activist and a wonderful actor. So highly recommend Pony Boy. I can also add the link because I believe it's for free on YouTube to the resource page as well. I will also say if you're looking for any books, Kimberly Zieselman, our executive director at Interact, also released a memoir last year. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Highly recommend that as well. A lot of these resources can be found on Interact's website. Are folks still there? I can't see if
Stephanie's still here.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I think I believe that we might be running close on time if we're not out of time yet. I think we ran over.
I was just going to say thank you so much. Love the presentation, love the amount of information, and definitely going to reach out to Interact. So thank you.
Thank you all so much, and thank you again for bearing with me. The age of technology. Thank you. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the summit. Take care.
Thank you, Bria.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You too.
Bria.
Thank you, Bria.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.